Hello, all you positive heads. Welcome to a very special episode dedicated to none other than you, the PHeads themselves. I am your PHead enthusiast and hostess for the day, Alexa Hauser. I have been blessed to have the experience of helping out with Positive Head's social media for the better part of a year. And through my digital interactions, I began to realize, as did Brandon, that we have some incredible beings listening to the show who are taking the information that Brandon puts out through the podcast and using it to transform their lives and create wonderful things. You listeners are all a huge, huge part of the life force that propels this show forward through time and space, and we think it's time to bring forth some of you beautiful reflections and delve a little deeper into this collection of energy that is the Positive Head community. So as we shine the spotlight on our listeners, what we'll have them do is share their stories of how they attracted Positive Head into their life, the transformation it's facilitated for them, and what they're focused on creating now that they're in a more positive headspace. Also, this episode of the Positive Head podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Hello, all you positive heads. On this week's PHead Posse episode, our guest is Stefan Ravalli. Stefan used to consider himself someone that teaches meditation and conscious living. Before that, he was a leader in the hospitality industry. Now his mission has been to integrate these worlds, making him more like a conscious living field correspondent. He teaches how unromantic avenues of life, like working in restaurant service, can be elevated to your own self-mastery laboratory. How meaning, purpose, and power can be brought into jobs we consider dreary or lowly, and how service and hospitality principles can be brought into our everyday lives, making us more mindful human beings in every way. Hi, Stefan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm excited. Like reading through your intro, I was thinking of all of my time in the service industry back in my college days and my high school days, and I like this topic. So I'm excited to dive into all this with you. But first, as we do on every one of these episodes, would love if you could tell us a bit about yourself and about your background and growing up and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I grew up in Canada. I'm from Toronto. I was generally really interested in psychology. I studied that in the beginning. I switched to film because I just tend to follow shiny objects, and this will definitely define the rest of the story. I was in film though, and during this time, I was just extremely kind of like neurotic and overwhelmed by my own mind. I always had a really intense, powerful one that caused me a lot of crises moments when I was younger. And I kind of really struggled to be a person that felt they could relate to the world. So after film school, I really didn't even find myself that interested in kind of remaining in the sort of cellar of being a screenwriter and, wrestling with my inner demons to like pump something out for, spend a year on it or two, and maybe it'll never get made. And in the Toronto film scene at the time, I just found myself blocked and wanting to leap into it. And then hospitality caught my eye, and found myself really attracted to the idea of bartending. And I don't know what it was, because it wasn't, a profession that was considered artistically of merit, or so I thought. But then I somehow just got I got kind of thrust into working in fine dining and with the right people. And these were bartenders that were artists, and these sort of dashing alchemists that would, for example, I asked this one guy who was mentoring me, hey, what's the best cherry liqueur? Like, where can I, like, what's a good one for me to buy? He goes, what? Make your own, dude. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And so in the beginning, I think I was drawn to bartending to kind of get me out of my shell and help me be able to relate to people and kind of like, the demands of that, to do it in a very sort of like fast pace, in the moment kind of way, was just kind of really good for overcoming that aspect of myself. But then, and this is a pitfall, then I got really wrapped up in the sort of art of it. I was like, the art. And I kind of, became part of that kind of league of bartenders, craft bartenders, we called ourselves at the time. And that was kind of ascending in the kind of early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, as this sort of like really esteemed position where you're both like a culinary kind of figure and also like, you're a personality with these like, hospitality and hosting skills as well. And it just kind of was like real kind of glitzy, glamorous thing to sort of be part of. And but at the same time, I fell back into that trap of being this person that couldn't relate to the world, because I acquired all of this knowledge about drinks and all of these, like, this aesthetic idea of like what a great drink was. And the world wasn't nearly caught up. And so I, was not able to relate to the world again, because I was just drowning in the materialism of bartending, the materialism of all the stuff I knew and all the stuff everyone else didn't, and became frustrated with humanity and resentful. And just became yet another one of those people that struggled with service. I just found my own way to struggle with it. I mean, in this profession, everyone just develops resentment for humanity for one particular reason or another, which is tragic. And I didn't think I'd be one of those people going in, because I just, I was just so optimistic about this whole profession to kind of like really allow me to work on the skills I need to do. So this became a problem. And so I then fled North America. I fled Canada first. I fled to California to go work at a bar there, and ended up running a bar in Northern California. And then I started traveling the world bartending. And I got got some really interesting positions, and I got sent to other countries to open bars there. And it was a really cool life. But I was unfulfilled, and I was realizing that this should be a lot more fun than it is, and I wasn't having fun. But then I met a meditation teacher. He taught me meditation, and that like changed everything for me. And I was drinking quite a lot too, and actually romanticizing drinking, because I thought it was fine as long as it was high quality drinking, right? And to whittle down my health like that. So I was one day 6 weeks into kind of meditating daily. I had like a beer in my hand, and I just looked at it and I said, "What am I doing? This is like every sip of this is taking me away from a mental state that I was absolutely happy with." And I realized that like working on myself and my own, sense of like, inner health, freshness, vitality, makes me not require these external things that'll just kind of distract me from it. And right there, I just went dry. I just dropped drinking and didn't pick it up again at all. And then I became a non-drinking bar manager, with comical results for years. And then finally, it just became too nagging of a proposition that I needed to do work outside of this format of hospitality. And so I fled again to India to learn to be a meditation teacher, and spent like 6 months in India, and came out, teaching meditation. Now, hospitality Stefan left behind. That's so dirty and filthy, full of dirty, filthy people. I'm this meditation teacher now. I live this, clean, dignified life. And I can just sit on a chair and have people surround me and say, "Oh, you're so wise, Stefan. Thank you for these teachings. Look at my new life," right? And then I just, this nagging sense that like, here I am, I'm just like, I think that I've relinquished my past, and I think that I've hit a reset button. And I think that I'm like, sitting here, in this sort of like sterilized environment. And that's where all the work's happening. That's where I'm really developing myself. I don't think so. There's something wrong with this. And I thought back to hospitality, my hospitality career. And that what I loved about it was that it put me on this like rocket fueled, like self-mastery journey. I mean, it was a dirty, rough, grimy one, but I bumped into a lot of walls, but I really got like a handle on myself in a way. And actually I had been, before I even got into meditation, and I was pretty, I wasn't very aware of kind of Eastern mysticism and practices that would later inform my life. I was really following a lot of Japanese bartending, and then a few these really famous bartenders that were proponents of like the Japanese way of bartending. And that was actually greatly influenced by Chadao, which is tea ceremony, Japanese tea ceremony, which and Chinese tea ceremony, which is a Zen practice. And those bartenders in Japan have this kind of real Zen sensibility when it comes to bartending, and a Zen sense of self-mastery. Like I remember reading this Japanese bartending book, and it said a bartender shall never show off. He shall never take any of the attention away from his guests. He is just, a very, like a host with a very light presence. And I was like, what? No, I show off. That's what it's about. And so, but like these like things it had me do, really brought me outside of who I thought I was. And I'm remembering that. And I'm remembering all these things I've learned in hospitality. And I'm remembering that my life has always really been about service, in every way. I just kind of changed how I did it. And then I remembered people always like look back at hospitality and say, oh, I learned all this stuff, even though in the moment they hated it. And, or just struggled with it a lot, even though there's these moments of enjoyment, it's generally like wears people down. And I said, what if I could go back into the world as a hospitality professional, as somebody who is now doing it mindfully, getting joy out of every moment, like Zen masters do. They can be doing any job and they could be getting joy from it. And what if I used it as this sort of platform to see, how far I've gone and how far I have to come, and also take these principles into life? Because there's this great bartender, Jim Meehan, he once said, what if everyone in the world did their job like a hospitality professional who really cares? And this, a real great bartender who really makes you feel special. Like the world would be transformed. And so I said, let's do all this. Let's just put this all together, rather than me just like looking back retrospectively saying like, oh yeah, I guess I learned a bit, even though, wow, that was rough. Let's now properly do this and learn lessons in the moment, and then teach people these lessons I'm learning, and challenge myself to like acquire more skills to just be better at interfacing with the world, and on the ground level, not in some ivory tower teaching, not in some conscious community. I'm really not part of one at all right now, which is really interesting and in a sense for me right now liberating. And so that kind of became the Serve Conscious project, which just started with me writing, and now it's podcasting, and now I'm kind of putting it together into like kind of a holistic coaching practice where any aspect of service I can help coach people on, and if they're dealing with struggles. So kind of that's where things are at now. So like I identify myself as this kind of used to be meditation teacher, become hospitality plus meditation teacher, because I guess, and I don't really believe it's good to identify yourself as something you used to be. But now what I am, I just feel is very in process. It's like what I used to be is now kind of getting fit into this new container, like these big principles I was taught, huge, like I was trained in a Vedic meditation tradition, Vedantic in a way too, which is like a yogic philosophical exploration about like the very nature of your being, and it's very big and it's very abstract feeling. But I feel like big principles like this need really small containers to really test them. And so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. It's all very in process. So Yeah.
I love that. I think that it is so refreshing. It is such a refreshing perspective and area of life to really bring this, this mentality into, and to bring this level of, consciousness into, like, service, truly, like true, what we think of as service, like the service industry, right? Which, like you said, I think in your intro, that, this is typically the industry or the area of life that we kind of look at. I think you said it was very unromanticized, right? It's or unromantic. It's like, oh, we think of it as more of like a lowly job or something that you have to do to make ends meet, but it's truly an opportunity to, well, I guess, could you speak a little more on that? Like, what do you, how would you reframe it for someone who, for example, let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, man, I really want to be this, that, and the other thing, but right now I need to be a bartender or a waiter or, a server of some sort. And I don't want to do it, and it feels demeaning to me, or it feels unromantic, as you said. How would you reframe that for them? Like, how would you approach them with your version?
That's a really good question. And there are so many things to look at, in terms of like what that position is in life, what that role you're playing is, basically it's, first of all, it's practice for something bigger. Everything is, right? Everything, like how you do anything is how you do everything. How you brush your teeth is, how you run your not-for-profit, like the small is the big, so did you brush your teeth like consciously and presently today? Then you'll be of better service to the world later on, right? That's the first thing. But secondly is you don't even need to consider these things smaller. This little thing like bringing someone a meal is insignificant to, let's say, some sort of like startup you're working on, or something quote unquote meaningful or purposeful. Those are constructs, that we've applied to ourselves, that are very techno-industrial, that are very aspirational, that are very kind of like, conditioned into us to thinking we have to have a certain amount of like power and influence, given to us by society, in order to say we're doing something meaningful. And so if you're in this sort of position of service, it is kind of low on the techno-industrial totem pole, and if you are, in some way, obligated to fulfill the needs of others, then you are like in this position of like servant, almost. And it's like servile, and it feels like indentured and enslaved. But that again is completely a mental construct. When you are in service, you are in a position of power, because you are literally the key holder of satisfying other people's needs. And you are the administrator of an environment that is foreign to others. So like when people come into a restaurant, they're actually like scared and uncomfortable. There's a crowd full of strangers. You spend 40 hours a week there, let's say. They don't. It's unfamiliar to them. And they sit down, they look at a menu, they don't know what half the stuff is. They're uneasy, and they just want a meal. They have to fulfill their most like primal need right now. and so you are like the gatekeeper of that. And so you're holding a lot more power. And so, they could, abuse you. They could be demanding. They could look down upon you. But that's not because of the position you're in. That is because of the whole legacy of issues and trauma they've had in their life. And they've simply just brought that into this very moment where they're in front of you right now, a little uneasy. When people are uneasy, all their issues come up. And, you happen to be a target for that. But it doesn't mean you're lowly at all. It's all them. So that would be like the first, that's a good place to start. You're in a position of power, and they're in a position of weakness, and they have been weakened by life, and whatever they're saying to you that you don't like is because of that. It's nothing to do with you. They don't even know you. So there, operating from there allows us to look at them compassionately. And when you're able to do that, look at someone compassionately when they're lost, and be like a host that makes them feel comfortable and found again. That's really powerful. And that will have like a rippling outward effect. that allows them to, they have a nice night. They feel satisfied. They feel attended to. Someone broke through their resistances, and like was patient enough to handle their own like difficult qualities, which they may be aware of, then they're going to be a little nicer to everyone else afterwards, perhaps. And then there's this radiating effect. So just from there, you have tremendous power. And then you get to do that over and over again. Like you have more opportunity to be in contact with people and flick these switches than many professions do. So there's like these like little, you're just like this little like covert operator, basically, that can like plant these like little seeds of goodness, joy, positivity. And, it has an incredible possibility there. Like, and then if a lot of people did that, the cumulative effect would be enormous, on like global state of consciousness.
Yeah. I just got this image while you're describing that, as like, it would actually even be fun to you think of yourself as someone almost like undercover, like you're undercover in this role in order to be of service, in order to help as much as you can, in order to, push out essentially like the good vibes and be like the vibe keeper even, or, help guide people on their way. You're a way shower in the role of a bartender or a server. And how powerful does that make you feel if you could kind of assume that idea that like, oh, I'm undercover here. Like no one even knows what I'm doing, but like what I'm doing is like, I am, I'm doing something. It's like surreptitious. Surreptitious has a bad connotation, but it's it's on the low. Yeah. I can't think of the word, but you're a good doer, like on the low. So I love that. I love that illustration. Yeah, that's powerful. And yeah. So wait, talk a little bit more about. So what did you call it? Serving consciously. Serve conscious. Serve conscious. Serve conscious. Yes. Yeah. So how can people, I know you mentioned as well that you're podcasting. So how can people like engage with this project and engage with your podcast?
Okay. Yeah. So, you can find the podcast anywhere where podcasts are, pretty much iTunes, and on my own site, just like with you guys at Positive Head, all the episodes are there, and you can comment and you can write me personally. I have this tragically underused section on my website, which is, tell me your stories. I will talk about them. Like throw down what you're experiencing that is difficult in your life of service. And I will very happily contextualize it within the content or personally back to you, depending on what your preference is. Because I'm just really curious with what people are faced with. And and really excited at the possibility to look at the way of alchemizing that, for lack of a better word. Yes. I love using the word alchemy, not so mystically necessarily. It's just taking something, that's difficult and rolling it into something that's valuable and instructive. So that's many of the ways that you can interact.
That's huge. If you're going, I see people in our Facebook group, Positive Heads, all the time going like, family, let me tell you about what's going on with me and give me a different perspective of this. Like, and that's what you're doing. That's like what you seem like a master in doing. It's like, give me your bad situation and let me show you how you're actually in this like power position. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love doing that. And so that's my favorite kind of engagement. I'll take any engagement, though, Yeah. But yeah, you can tell me how great everything is, and I'll say, well, thanks, great. Hey, tell me something horrible happening in your life. that's a little more exciting for me. But yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. And yeah, we'll put the links to that in the show notes as well. So people can, go to your website and check out the podcast. And awesome. Well, so how about, you've already given us some great wisdom, but what's one thing you think is important for every Positive Head listener to know or understand as they continue on their own journey?
Okay. I think we were talking about this earlier, actually, where It's all forming right now.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's big to like the one thing.
Or it could be a few.
Okay, yeah. I'll start. No, once I get rolling too, it'll be hard to stop me anyway. So
Okay.
we can start small anyway. I think it really doesn't matter what it is that you're doing, and even like what opportunity you have to be whatever it is you think you are. So like a lot of the times, people like they might be like working as a server and they're like, oh, I'm actually an artist. Like I'm actually like in a band. And this is not where I really get to be myself. Wait, just check me out this Saturday at the whatever place, me playing. That's where I'm really me when I'm on stage, when I'm like, when I get to express whatever, all this stuff going on inside of me. But I really think that we experience so much frustration when we are in situations where we feel kind of like, slightly alien. Like, let's say this artist is then serving like a 70-year-old stockbroker, and they don't feel like they can let out truly who they are, and they have to censor themselves. But it's really not about that. It's not about like just overtly expressing this. All of your ideas, opinions, all of your artistic sensibilities. Truly making contact with the world can be in the simplest ways that don't even require words. It doesn't even require a good script. Like, for example, like if you were to offer someone more water, you can totally put your fullest of self into that. And you're literally saying something that's a standard restaurant script. Would you like some more water? And you don't have to be a rock star artist when you do it. You can put so much intention into it and so much consciousness, such that it can give someone everything they need in that moment. And that's really who we are. Like if you think, like even let's say you're like, like into yoga, meditation, esoteric stuff, shamanism. And you've gathered all of this stuff and you're working on yourself and building yourself until it's actioned, until you bring it into the world. It's an incomplete system. And actually, until you bring any aspect of yourself into the world, it's totally an incomplete system. It's valuable in its own way, but that period where you make contact, that's when everything fully realizes. And it doesn't mean playing a teacher role. And it doesn't mean, giving the absolute best advice. It just means giving the moment and that person everything that they need, whatever that is.
Wow. Powerful. Absolutely. I feel like you're highlighting, how actually simple things are. Like how powerful, like there's power in the simplicity of things. Like there's power in the simple reframing of things, like what we experience in our life. We're just so used to seeing it a certain way. We're so used to telling certain stories about it. And it really is just so much simpler than we're thinking. It's so much simpler than we think it is. It's really just about kind of deciding through a new lens of like what we want to see and how we want to interact with people and the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I have and still do struggle with keeping things that simple. And for me, like service helps with that. It gets me out of the tangles of myself, into the needs of the present, which are often so much more simple than whatever like narrative is spinning around my mind. And so it gives things such a finer point when I can bring my attention to that, to the needs of the moment. And I think, we spend so much time like bumping into walls and creating all these expectations for ourselves only to exhaust the complicated aspect of the journey, to arrive at simplicity,
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. We make things so much harder than they need to be exactly. It's like, exhausting ourselves in the complications and then arriving back in simplicity. Oh, I love that. That's so true. So true. Sorry, excuse me. Cool. Well, I also have a question, that we ask everyone who's on this segment because we love stories here. Do you have any, fun or inspiring stories of manifestation or synchronicity? I'm sure you do.
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, let's go back to India. We are in the Himalayan foothills. I'm deep in teacher training, meditation teacher training in the tradition I teach. Have been trained to teach. I was meditating like 14 hours a day. Meditation and asanas, like yogic postures, 14 hours a day. Just kind of locked into this inner world that I was fairly comfortable in because I loved being isolated, in certain ways. I love being my own person and autonomous, and being in retreat or being in a sort of monastic setting was comfortable for me. I don't have to worry about anyone but myself in a way. That kind of defined my life, of travel, of just jumping onto the next boat, and seeing what happens, and then. And actually leaving in my wake a lot of confused, annoyed romantic partners. And then, but in this moment, I was like, I think I really want like a real partner. And I think I really want to I really just think this is the next like place of maturity for me. And it just really sounds beautiful to co-create with someone. And, I was always trained with the sort of principle of constant evolution. And that means go where you're not. So if you're adventuring too much, then slow your ass down, and stay in one place and appreciate where you are. Maybe become part of a community, and I'd always felt so ghostly, always a tourist in some other, community. And I was like, yeah, just settle down and build with someone. It's time. And I was like, no rush. I'm just becoming a teacher now. And then I finished my teacher training, came frolicking through India for months. And then as I approached South India, I reached out to a friend and teacher. And he said, "Oh, awesome, great." So I went to, I was going to go to Chennai where he lives. And then I get there and he's got a car for me and he drives me to Vellore. We got there at 2 a.m. because it's really far from Chennai. And I go to bed right away. I wake up in the morning. He knocks on my door and he's Indian and he's like, hello, welcome. And I was like, where are we? He's like, Golden Temple, many blessings, many blessings. I was like, Golden Temple. And I look outside and there I am, right at the foot of, what's it called? Sri Narayanipuram. That is the world's largest golden temple, built in the last 15 years or so. It cost billions, which this saint there, who's believed to be an embodiment of Lakshmi Narayani, in a male body, female goddess in a male body. He raised billions of dollars to build this. And incredible place, really powerful. In fact, I felt kind of sick the first day there because it just kind of purifies you. My lymph nodes were swollen. It was really intense. And I'm like, so what's up? What are we doing here? And he's like, well, there's another American teacher here running a teacher training, and people are meditating and learning to teach meditation. And I was like, cool. So I hung out with them a bit. I kind of kept my distance because, I know they're going through a monastic experience. And, but one of them just kind of felt fairly drawn to me and I felt fairly drawn to her. And then we, just continued chatting and then, stayed in touch, after the teacher training. And then she, after India was going to Taiwan to live with a Zen master, to learn, Chadao, which is the way of Chinese tea ceremony, which is kind of a Zen and Taoist and Buddhist practice, kind of all rolled into one sort of mindfulness tea preparation practice. And I was like, okay, well, let's go. I'll join you. And then, and it was there that we realized that we were pretty meant to kind of be together. We stayed in touch, and then she became my wife, and we moved to America together.
Wow. Love that.
And she said, I forgot this part. This is so important for your thematically. She had a vision of me when she was living monastically, doing her meditation teacher training during one of her meditations. A vision of me specifically. And then I came stumbling into her life. The timing was uncanny. Everything was just kind of uncanny for this to occur. I mean, I was just wandering India thinking I was going to leave soon. And then this happened. So,
yeah. And do you think in that situation, for example, that, you like received the thought one day, like right before this happened, it's like, actually, like I would like a partner. And it's like, I always wonder how that works. I mean, time isn't linear like we think. So it's all kind of happening at the same time, but it is interesting because it's like, did you have the thought first and then attract that in, or was it there coming and you were like sensing it and having the thought? You know what I mean?
Oh,
I like
absolutely.
to think of it sometimes like that.
Oh, definitely. Oh, the causality is absolutely up for grabs. This could have already happened and just kind of like grabbed me by the shirt and told me to catch up,
Yeah. Totally. I love that. Ooh, and it's 111 right now. 111. Auspicious. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that stuff. And that's so beautiful and such an amazing way to meet your wife. And yeah, so I guess before we wrap up, is there anything else that you feel really called to share with the audience? Anything that you want to, any parting words?
Golly, I've just dropped the, like, this is the one thing you should know. So how do I follow that act? Maybe something simpler. I think, if you are, out there, and you're serving and it's hard, that's fine because it is. I'm just saying it's good that it's hard and you have a lot to gain from the challenges. And the fact that it's hard, that it's hard basically says that the work isn't lowly, that the work isn't uninspiring, that it has something to teach you. Anything that is difficult has something to teach us. And, it is so common for people in the highest states of like mastery and like gurudom to deliberately play those roles, to deliberately like put themselves in those roles, to basically make contact with humanity from that place. And I'm sure they're gaining something themselves, working on themselves too. And there's many that are famous for throwing their students into those situations. So the difficulty and the dreariness is all so valuable if you just meet it with the right state of mind. And please tell me all these obstacles you're having, and write me. I'm happy to engage on my site. And just know that you aren't being forced to do it. And actually, that's the first shift that anyone can make. You aren't obligated to do anything. And there's the one thing that makes service difficult, like one really core thing is thinking that we're being forced to, when we have the inner freedom to make any choice. And that choice could include starving to death, but just know that it's your choice and to have accountability for it. And your life will change. The feeling of life will change like very, very dramatically. Okay, I've talked enough.
I love it. That's a great note to end on. Absolutely. Just knowing that you have that choice absolutely gives you so much power and kind of takes you out of the victim mode, I think, a bit. So, and that is very powerful to get out of that mindset. So thank you so much, Stefan. This was so fun. You're so refreshing. And, love this kind of new perspective on this part of life, which a lot of us have engaged in and will continue to engage in at different parts of our life, and a way to really empower ourselves through it and really see it in a different way. So thank you for that. And everyone listening, I hope you go check out Stefan's project and his podcast. We'll put the links in the show notes. And until next time, Stefan, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Alexa. Honored to be here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. You as well. Bye.
Bye. Ciao.
That's it for this week's episode. If you're a listener with a story to share and are interested in being featured on a future episode of this special series, you can email me at alexa@positivehead.com. Also, if you're craving more consciousness elevating content, be sure to check out Gaia, which is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web, where you can stream an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. As you all hear Brandon constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration, and if you're looking to journey deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place we know of to do it. Period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Otherwise, tune in next Friday for another HeAd Posse episode. And until then, as Brandon always says, journey well.